Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Europuck podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Hayden, or Oddman Rush, as you can see up there, and you might notice that I'm by myself this week. My fellow co-host Chris isn't with me today, and there's a good reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. Earlier this week, I had the very unique opportunity to interview a couple of people involved in Israel hockey. They recently saw our bonus clip on our YouTube channel talking about the KHL game that's supposed to take place in Jerusalem over the next couple of months or the next year or so, and they contacted us on our email at europuckpodcast@gmail.com, I believe, and they wanted to sit down and have a little chat with me about how Israel hockey works and the plans that they have for the future and some of the guys, some of the Israeli nationals that are playing elsewhere in the hockey world, for example, in the NCAA and some of the lower divisions, some of the guys playing elsewhere in Europe, and kind of the plans for Israel hockey, how it was established, how it's got to where it is today, some of the obstacles they faced, some of the difficulties they've had. But they very kindly sat down with me for about 90 minutes and had a little chat with me about what Israel hockey is all about. So, for this episode, without further ado, let me play my interview with Israel hockey. So, I'm joined here with a very special guest here on the podcast this week. Some of you keener-eyed viewers of the podcast might notice that it's not Chris here this week. It's somebody a little bit different. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Mark here with me on the Europuck podcast. Now, I've already done my bit of intro to let you guys know a bit what's going on here. But Mark, do you want to just give a brief overview of who you are and what you kind of do and why this podcast is a great place for you to come and chat to us for a little while?
Well, sure. Thank you, Hayden, for having me on. First of all, this afternoon here in New York, where I'm based out of. My name is Mark Brunnen-Graber. I'm a 49-year-old former hockey player and attorney in private practice in New York. I also am a former editor of a website that was around for about a dozen years called International Hockey Forums. And I also am helping run the Israeli National Hockey Society, which is a new venture designed to promote the sport of hockey in Israel and support the Israeli Ice Hockey Federation, which, as you know, is an IIHF member, support the Israeli National Domestic League and its constituent clubs. Also help the various hockey schools in the country with the training of youth so that the next generation can play the sport. And, I'm an old man now, but I'm a former player myself.
So not only are you a former player, you're doing all of these great things for Israeli hockey, you're also an attorney as well. How do you find the time to do all of this, Mark?
Well, that's why I'm bald now. But, the way I got into Israeli hockey is a little bit of a story. I'm Jewish by faith and ethnicity, so there's the natural connection to Israel as an ancestral homeland for myself and my family. I grew up in New York. I played high school hockey here, which isn't particularly high level, but I managed to become pretty decent as a goaltender, and I ended up playing for Binghamton University in upstate New York for 4 years. They play in a loop called ACHA, which in terms of the hockey pyramid for university hockey is third out of 5 tiers, in the States. And then I actually, in the early days of the Israeli Domestic League, which started really in the beginning of the 90s, and I'm 49, so I played from 1990 to 1993 in college for context. I had been in touch with Evgeny Gusin, who is an Israeli hockey legend and now is the owner of HC Bat Yam, which is pretty much the premier Israeli league club for several years now. He's a legendary goalie in Israeli circles. He played in the Central Red Army, CSKA Moscow minor league system. He also played professionally for Kristal Elektrostal in the old Soviet Union. And then he moved to Israel and was part of, the founding of the Israeli Federation and the Domestic League, as well as HC Bat Yam, the club. And they were looking for a backup goalie to him. He's a couple of years older than me. I had been in touch, and I had been given an offer to go over there and play. It didn't end up happening. I was going to law school, and that took priority because you can't really make much of a living playing hockey in Israel. So I always kind of regretted not going over. Years later, the internet comes around, and I became involved with a website called International Hockey Forums. That had a really nice run for about a dozen years with people from all over the world talking about hockey in all kinds of countries you wouldn't expect it to be in, Israel being one of them. I became active on that forum, eventually became the legal advisor and a part owner of the website and an editor. That led me to meet a whole bunch of different guys, both alumni, administrative, and current players at the time on the national team. And so what eventually happened was there's a guy by the name of Avishai Geller. He was the captain of the Israeli squad. At the time, he had had a cup of coffee playing pro for the Alaska Aces, which eventually was in the ECHL. But prior to that, they had been in an old league called the West Coast Hockey League that merged in. So Avishai got in touch with me and basically said he was putting together a charity event in Boston to play against MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where Avishai had actually captained the hockey team back in the day. So he had explained that it was too expensive to bring over the entire Israeli national squad. He was putting together about half the team, and then he wanted to fill it out with American and Canadian Jews to kind of give it a little bit of authenticity. And so he asked me if I'd want to play goal. This was back in 2014, and at the time I said, I'm going to be 42 years old. I haven't really played much in about 8 years, and I don't know that you'd really want me. But he laughed and said, it's a charity game. Just, come down and play. I did. And that led to a whole slew of other games that I helped organize, actually, to bring awareness to Israeli hockey and raise some funds. And what we did was we ended up playing games against a bunch of different NHL alumni teams. And we played also Duquesne University out of Pittsburgh. And we ended up beating the college teams, and we ended up losing to the NHL alumni teams. No shock. NHL guys in their 40s and even early 50s that are still in great shape and want to beat you or are going to beat you. So that's how it started.
Interesting. Okay, I was just going to say, like, NHL players, everybody that's a fan of an NHL team, they can like discuss their abilities as hockey players as they get in their later stages in their careers, but they are still better than 99.9% of anybody that's played hockey on this planet. So it's really interesting when you put those alumni up against either guys that haven't played for professionally or guys that have had different experiences in their careers. There is still that divide, isn't there?
Yeah, when we lined up to play against the Dallas Stars alumni at the American Airlines Arena in Dallas, I remember I started the second period. I didn't last very long, by the way. I got pulled after, I think I gave up 3 goals on 9 shots in about 10 minutes or so. But anyway, it's fine. I made a save on decarbonate. I'll take that with me to the grave.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think when they lined up for the face-off, it was Greg Adams, Bob Basson, Landon Wilson, Richard Matvichuk, Gerald Didick, and Marty Turco in net. And I remember saying to myself, what the hell am I doing out here? But it was fun. It was fun. It was a good cause, and it helped raise awareness. And Israeli hockey really has started to become a little bit more of a known quantity around the world now partly because of the efforts of what we did. And that led to the creation now of the Israeli National Hockey Society. Really to help promote the game in Israel among everything, like I said, from the National League and its constituent clubs, help the federation itself, help the hockey schools. And basically, we have a website, israelhockey.com now, that's still under construction, but it's functional. And you can go there and buy merchandise, and you can make donations, and you can support the program of your choice. And we are also trying to make it a one-stop shop so that you can find information about the domestic league and, about the national team programs and basically the different schools and everything that's going on. So it's an ongoing thing. We're putting up some videos and pictures and things that anybody who has an interest in hockey there can really go and enjoy. obviously Israel isn't just important for only Jewish people. It's Jesus's birthplace. It's important to everybody around the world who's Christian faith. It's important to the Muslim faith. And one of the beautiful things about Israeli hockey, contrary to what you see in a lot of the media around the world, for the most part, at least citizens, people who live in Israel proper, they live in peace with each other, regardless of whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Baha'i, Druze. And we actually have in one of the schools, the Canada-Israel Hockey School in the north, in Metula, which is actually run by Levav Weinberg, who's the president of the Israeli Ice Hockey Federation. They actually have had Arab Druze, Arab Muslim, and Arab Baha'i children skate with Jewish children, and it's a great way to break down barriers, and it's kind of a microcosm of what can go on in the world if people come together through sports, and specifically hockey.
Exactly. I think it shows sports, they transcend those boundaries of everything else that's going on in the world, and we've noticed a lot recently over the last couple of months with the current global situation, as it were. All of the fact that sports has been quite a welcome escape for a lot of people that are kind of like, okay, we've been spending months sitting here in quarantine, isolation, lockdowns. Let's actually have something to distract us a little bit. But I'm glad that you mentioned the Israeli hockey and the Israeli league, because I wanted to ask you, as a UK hockey fan, we're kind of used to a lot of our population here in the United Kingdom not knowing that we have hockey, let alone a professional hockey league that competes with some of the best leagues out there. We have a GB national team that is in the top tier world championships this last year, obviously beat France to stay in for the 2020 tournament, which obviously didn't take place because of COVID-19. I would imagine that feeling of kind of a lot of people not knowing the thing that you love, it doesn't exist, is even more amplified in a place like Israel, where it's not seen as a conventional hockey market. So what's the kind of layout of Israeli hockey like? What's the domestic league like? Are there any comparables that you can make that might make it easier for some other people to think, okay, that's the kind of quality that we're looking at here?
Sure. I would say, comparing it to, say, a North American model, I would compare the level of the clubs more or less to a college club, anywhere from, the third through fifth tier of college hockey in the United States. USA Hockey divides junior hockey into, say, the USHL, which is equivalent to Canadian Major Junior, the NAHL, which is Junior A level, and then they have what they call Tier 3, which is basically what we would call Junior B and C. So I would say the Israeli domestic league is somewhere around, intercollegiate club in the United States and Junior B level, or what the US would call Tier 3 junior. There are players who are above that. There are players who are below it. Part of what you see too in Israel is that you don't really have the pool of players that you have even in a country like GB, or throughout the UK. There's very few players of quality that can raise the league to the level that it's even at. So there's a wide disparity between the level of the teams and even certain players in the league. And you can get players from as low as, 15 years of age all the way up through their 40s, guys my age, and everything in between. So it's a little hard to make comparables. I would say, certainly they'd get mauled by EIHL teams. If you had to do the NIHL that you guys have, that's still probably better, but I would say that the top couple of Israeli club teams could probably give some of those teams a game. Okay. As we were talking about before we started recording, HC Bat Yam, which is run by Evgeny Gusin, who incidentally is the former president of the federation and who really helped build the league to the point where it's at, as I'm describing it. Really during his oversight, the league went from about 2013, 2014 to about 2017, 2018. It had its kind of golden era. And, during that time, his club, HC Bat Yam, really won a whole bunch of titles. That team couldn't play, and they played in the Continental Cup, and they were up 3-1 on HYC Herentals, who was the champion of the Beneliga. The Dutch-Belgian Joint League. They were tied 3-3 after 2 periods, ended up losing 7-4. They also were up 3-1 on Churi-Jordan, which was the Spanish National League champion, and they ended up losing that game 5-4 with a goal. It was tied 4-4. They lost with 20 seconds in regulation.
Oh.
So, they can play, but I wouldn't want to put them against, say the Nottingham Panthers or an EIHL team. That would not be pretty. But yeah, it's a decent league and it's getting better. But it's in essence, it's an amateur league. When you see Bat Yam play in the Continental Cup, they're usually the only completely amateur club in the competition. They might have 2 or 3 players that have past pro experience or some high level collegiate or junior experience, but for the most part, after the top line, it's not as deep as a club like you'd find out of the EIHL.
I mean, as somebody that comes from the UK and we're used to getting destroyed by other teams from across Europe, to know that we might have a good chance to handily beat a team, we'll take that any day of the week. We're used to having our fair share of defeats to the Swedish teams and the Finnish teams and everything like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, the Cardiff has played a couple of good games in the Champions League over the past couple of years. Cardiff Devils, which brings me to actually something of a British hockey legend who's also Israeli. That's Max Bierbreyer. He's winding down his career now because Max, forgive me, I don't remember if you're 39 or 40, but Max is a friend of mine, and as you know, is something of a Cardiff Devils legend, and in his older age has played at the second level with Telford and now the Swindon Wildcats. So yeah, I mean, but the top guys like Max Bierbreyer, or you may know of the current Israeli national team captain, Eliezer Sherbatov, who had 1 season in the KHL. He's currently over in Poland, but has played, in Kazakhstan. He's played in the French League Magnus. So the top Israeli guys have played elsewhere. You have, he's also in his later 30s now, but Mikhail Kozevnikov, who's on the Israeli national team and has played for Bat Yam in the Continental Cup. He spent years in the German, the DEL, the Deutsche Elite League, and also DEL2. So there are Israeli players that have some real pro experience, but those guys don't tend to play in the National League very long in Israel because they need better competition.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just going to say...
It's really tough. It's really... last point.
Yeah, go for it.
I apologize. You got to remember, Israel makes do with one Olympic-sized rink in the far north of the country on the border with Lebanon. They also have a half-size rink, or a little over half-size rink, where it's only suitable for 4-on-4 plus goalies. That's in Holon, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv. That's where the population center is, and they only have this tiny little rink, and they have to share this rink and the one up in the north, the full-sized one, with figure skating, hockey schools, recreational hockey, every different age group from say U8 all the way up through U20, and then they also have to squeeze in the National League team training. So it's really difficult. And another rink has opened now outside of Netanya, so it's the second full-size rink. It's only open for less than a year, I want to say. So to get to the level that they've gotten as a national team, which is currently in Division 2A, and they're normally in Division 2B, is pretty remarkable considering the lack of resources in the country.
I was going to ask you which division of the World Championships the Israeli national team is in, because our great British national team have been through that same slow burn of, gradually grinding ourselves up the different levels, and we obviously had those two or three back-to-back gold medals in the World Championship lower divisions that got us to where we are today, that kind of miracle run that we had. But I'm glad that you mentioned the lack of facilities available in Israel for the national team and for hockey schools and everything like that, because you're giving me some brilliant segues here, Mark, to kind of ask all the questions that I want to. So you're doing a fantastic job. You're a great guest. So I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned it, you've alluded to it slightly earlier in this episode, and you've mentioned it to me when we were talking before we started recording this podcast. You mentioned how the 2013-14 season to the 2017-18 season was kind of the golden years of Israeli hockey as we've known, or as you've known it so far. I just wanted to ask you, you said that obviously in our conversations, things have taken a bit of a downward turn over the last couple of years. Obviously, the current situation doesn't help things at all, but you could say that about every sort of area in the world. What do you think of what do you think of the things that led to that success over that sort of 5-year period? And are you seeing some of the things that led to that success maybe not be there so much after the last couple of years? And what do you think could be done to help improve the, not just getting eyes on Israeli hockey, but to improve the infrastructure and make it sort of more of a legitimate, viable venture for people that are interested in becoming hockey players in Israel?
Well, I think there's a number of factors that play into it. For a start, during that run of about 5 years or so, there really was harmony in the sense of, as you've probably seen, and I don't know, so I could be off base here, but in smaller hockey countries and the hockey federations, you see a lot of politics, you see a lot of different groups that have their idea of how things should be run. But there was really a period of relative stability and peace during those years. So the clubs, the different owners of all the different clubs and the federation board and everything were all kind of in harmony at that time. There's been some differences with various groups that have history with the federation over the last couple of years that have caused a little bit of infighting, and I'm not going to pick sides and say, who's right, who's wrong. That's really not my place. And with the Israeli National Hockey Society that I've helped form now, we're really an organization that looks to support the federation as a whole. Kind of the attitude that the name on the front is more important than the name on the back. So regardless of who runs it or who's in power at any given time, our loyalty will always be to the federation as a whole rather than any individual group. Also, different some clubs have pulled themselves from the National League now because of the various disputes, and that weakens things. When you have some good clubs that were competitive and they pulled themselves, and now you only have 2 or 3 clubs that were at that level, and basically what Israel Hockey had to do, they had to take their B League and basically move it up to the National League. And then they had like 3 teams left that really were of the National League caliber, and that led to seeing games, 20-1, 17-2, that kind of thing. So, there's a little bit of a reversal now, and we're hopeful to see that, some of the clubs and the current federation will eventually have a rapprochement and come back and put everything together, because really the community for Israeli hockey is too small, to have that kind of discord. But hopefully it'll come back together, and I think it will, because there's good people on all sides. There's no real villains in this. It's just like any group of people, there are disputes over how things can best be run or what have you. So, again, with the Israeli National Hockey Society, we're not taking sides. We're not getting dragged down into the politics of it. We just want to support all the sides and hopefully help them bridge whatever differences they have and get back to the business of making it the best it can be. As far as the rink situation, like anything else, you need investment. And if you think hockey and GB is a minor sport, come to Israel. We would kill to have what GB has with the EIHL. We really would. And the EIHL, I got to tell you, has really taken leaps and bounds in its level of play over the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years, and at least in my opinion, from what I see. Remember, I was an editor at International Hockey Forum, so I'm quite familiar with the league. And, I think some of I can't remember off the top of my head if it was Nottingham or besides Cardiff, but there were a couple of teams that played in the Champions League. And far from getting destroyed, as you alluded to, maybe that was in years past, but over the past several years, the British clubs have been very, very competitive in the league and have even played, it's one thing to play well against similar teams like Danish or, French teams, Belarusian teams, all leagues that are pretty similar for the most part to the EIHL. But now all of a sudden, they're playing games against Finnish Liga and Swedish hockey league teams, Swiss, NLA or whatever they're calling it nowadays, the top Swiss league teams, and they're not embarrassing themselves. They're playing really hard. So you guys, I think, have a lot to look forward to once coronavirus is behind us.
I completely agree. And obviously we were very, Chris and I, my co-host, were very disappointed to see that the Elite League season was cancelled, and obviously the Champions Hockey League was recently just announced to be cancelled for the rest of the year, which we completely understand why it needed to be done. But as UK hockey fans, that we don't have a huge amount of hockey to watch. We don't have games every day. We don't have the best players in the world playing over here. We were set to have, obviously with the World Championships being cancelled as well, we were set to have Team Canada come over in April to play our national team as like a warm-up game. So that didn't happen either because of the coronavirus and everything like that. So it really sucks. And I can only imagine for you guys, where you're a smaller, tighter-knit community, it sucks even more that there's all of these difficulties, that there's obviously all the sort of politics of the domestic game, and then you throw this pandemic on top of it. It's just another thing you don't need right now, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, we don't even know if the Israeli League is going to happen or not. There hasn't been an announcement that it's been canceled for the year yet, but it's on hold right now. The coronavirus is pretty bad in Israel at the moment, and Israel's under its second wave at the moment, and the country's basically locked down. So hockey, much less God knows how many other things going on in the country, are basically on shutdown now. So, and the problem too is when you have a really small hockey country, and Israel's not unique in this. You can take a country like Spain, Bulgaria, Mexico, some of these other countries, Serbia. The composition, meaning the number of clubs and who those clubs are in the National League, has a lot more fluidity to it than you would see in the EIHL. Or even the NIHL. Clubs fold, they leave and then only do, say their junior and youth sections for a while. Then they come back when they get enough guys who are of age to start competing competitively again. So it's a little bit jumpy that way compared to a more established hockey country. But there are certain clubs that come back time and time again, besides Bat Yam. There's the Rishon Devils. There's it's called CIHS Metula, which is the Canada-Israel Hockey School we had talked about earlier, where they have all those different initiatives. Those teams pretty much are always involved. Then there were some teams that had been long-standing teams, such as Malot and Kfar Saba. Those are competitive clubs that just, at the moment, have decided not to participate, but hopefully they'll come back at some point. So that's what we're dealing with in the domestic league in Israel at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's a very similar situation to a lot of the other leagues around the world. Obviously, we've seen the QMJHL in Quebec has been struggling with coronavirus cases, but they are playing. The OHL is thinking about taking out body checking and fighting. So when those big leagues, and obviously the NHL are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and the AHL is a bit sort of discussing or up in arms, as trying to figure out how to go about their season as well. When those big, well-funded leagues are having issues, it's obviously going to be that the rest of the hockey world is going to have very similar issues. But obviously the problem is they don't have the funding to kind of find a solution to it, do they?
Yeah, no, I think the Israeli without getting into numbers, I think the Israeli Federation's entire budget to run the men's national team, the U20, the U18, all of its youth programs, the National League, and everything that goes along with it is less than the salary of a veteran AHL player, much less than a veteran NHL player. Mm. And that's to run hockey in the entire country with all of the clubs, all of the schools, the leagues, all of the different age groups, the national team program. Try doing that on less than say, $300,000-$400,000 American for an entire year. So what is that? 200,000 pounds? I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
Pounds. Try running an entire country's hockey program on that. And but when you think about that, it does make me proud in the sense to see how far the Israeli national team has come and how far the league has come. I mean, the standard wouldn't be something that would impress British hockey fans, but it's not terrible. And considering the lack of resources and the lack of rinks, I think it's pretty remarkable, actually.
I mean, us here in the UK, we'll take any hockey we can get at this point, Mark. I mean, we haven't had any in a little while. I haven't seen a hockey game live for a very long time. I talked about it on the most recent episode last week. But yeah, we'll take whatever hockey we can get, whether it's Israeli, whether it's Spanish. We'll take it. We'll take it all.
Well, what we're gonna.
Go
Shoot,
for
I'm
it.
sorry.
No. You go for it.
No,
Go
I was
for
going
it.
to tell you, if you wanted to see some Israeli hockey, one of the things we're going to do with the society on the IsraelHockey.com site, there are, if you know where to look, clips, full games, and what have you all over the internet. So we're going to try and start compiling them and putting them both on the IsraelHockey.com website, as well as putting them on a YouTube channel so that people can enjoy it and get a feel for it. The site's going to have ultimately Hebrew and Russian language sections. But for now, we focused on English because English really is the language, the common tongue of the world, so to speak. So we've really focused on putting it into English first. So people in the UK and around the world who are interested in seeing it can jump on. And again, it's under construction at the moment, but there are little clips and bits and pieces of everything from the Israel U20 team, the men's team, some of that continental stuff that I had talked to you about. So it's on there now, some of it, so you can start getting a little feel for it.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. And I think obviously anybody watching that's kind of the fact that we're talking about Israeli hockey might have piqued their curiosity a little bit. So I'm sure we'll be able to find a way to give them the links on the show so they can go and check it out and see what they think. So I just wanted to talk about Eliezer Sherbatov, because you mentioned him slightly earlier in the episode. And for those long-time listeners that have been listening to the Europuck podcast since the very beginning or the first few episodes in, will know that we found his decision to sign with the Auschwitz hockey team in the Polish League a very interesting one. And we read a couple of interviews regarding him and kind of his thoughts on why he signed there and what his motivations were. I know, speaking to you before the episode, that you're quite familiar with Sherbatov and you're quite good friends with him. Is that correct? Yeah.
We're friendly. I mean, we're definitely friends. I don't know that he'd count me as one of his besties or anything, but I'm obviously quite a bit older than he is, almost 20 years to the day, in fact. But Eliezer a good kid. He's not a kid anymore, but he's about to turn 29 or just turned 29, and I'm 49. But I know him. And he's a good guy. He very much cares about Israeli hockey, cares about his heritage. Just like anybody would, right? I mean,
Exactly.
I would assume, if someone's a proud Englishman or Welsh or, Scotsman or what have you, he's no different. He's proudly Israeli and Jewish. And he took a lot of criticism in the certain quarters of the Israeli press. And one of the chief rabbis of Israel really got on him for signing. His attitude's a little different, Look, he's living the dream of many people to play pro hockey. And although he never made it to, say, the NHL level, he had one season in the KHL, and he's been kind of doing the tour of the European leagues like a lot of professional hockey players from North America do. And this was an opportunity for him that he felt was a good fit. And his feeling on it is that, what better way to show national and ethnic and maybe a little religious pride, but then to go to a place that was the scene of one of the greatest tragedies and crimes against really not only the Jewish people, but humanity, and go there and show that he's not afraid and that the ghosts of the past are not going to rule who he is or who we are as a people today. And the reality, too, that I want to stress is that everybody at the Unia club that he signed with in Auschwitz, what is it? I don't know if I can pronounce it. Ashwim.
It's Una Auschwitz or something. I'll probably pronounce that awfully, but yeah, something like that.
For all of our Polish guests, I apologize for my horrible pronunciation. But what I did want to point out is that everybody in the town has been overwhelmingly positive to him. He has not experienced any kind of anti-Semitism. The fans have embraced him. Management has embraced him. His coaching staff and teammates have embraced him. He's felt very welcome there. There is a small Jewish community that has come back. They've obviously embraced him. So for him, it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience. And again, it's 2020, Hayden, right? I can only tell you that I have a lot of friends from Germany and Austria. I have friends who are German and Austrian background here in the States as well. I'm not going to blame people of today for what happened in the 1940s. I'm not going to blame, people's ancestors. If you want to go that route, throughout human history, every group has had incidents where other groups have either done the wrong thing or there's been wars or what have you. We can either dwell on the past and hold grudges against people who are long dead, or we can move forward. And that's one of the things that I think is beautiful about Israeli hockey. We will always honor the memory of victims of the Holocaust, and we will always never forget what happened so that it doesn't happen again. But at the same time, you have to reach out to people of today's generation who personally had nothing to do with it, and you have to be willing to extend a hand in friendship and have common humanity. And I think that's what Eliezer's done in Poland. I think that's what the Polish people have done for him. So I think it's a positive experience all around. And right now, as of the other day, he had 10 points in 10 games on 6 goals and 4 assists to lead the team in scoring. And he's one of the leading scorers in the league. So good. I'm glad for him.
Yeah, exactly. Like Chris and I have very much echoed a lot of the sentiments that you've said within previous episodes. When we heard about his decision, we very much took on the idea that we wanted to keep an eye on how he was doing, because it was such a great story. Is because both Chris and myself, we're not members of the Jewish community, so we don't have that personal connection to any of it. I'm quite close. For those people that listen to the podcast that don't know, I spend my summers working at a Jewish summer camp in Montreal in Canada. So I've got a lot of friends within the Jewish community. So and my girlfriend is Jewish as well. So I'm very I as the years have gone on, I've become a lot more keyed up with everything, and I'm a lot more attentive to kind of that stuff, because as somebody that doesn't grow up in that culture or in that religion, it's very easy to kind of not know what's going on and kind of not necessarily turn a blind eye, but kind of be ignorant to all of it and kind of not know what the real struggles other people from other religions, whether it be Jewish or any other religions or communities, go through. So I think the fact that for myself and Chris personally, the fact that he's taken this opportunity to kind of take back a bit of history, we have nothing but respect for him on this show. And we really hope him the best. We keep an eye out every single time, every week we go through the European League scores. We always take the effort to kind of single out Sherbatov and go, look, he's a point per game. He's doing a really good job. We're kind of following the team and the league because of him,
Yeah, he's an electric player. He's a fun personality. He's a wild man, but he's a fun personality, and he's like me. I'm only, I don't know what this translates into metric wise, but I'm only 5'8". He's basically the same. He's a shorter guy. He's in a hell of a lot better shape than me. I mean, if you've seen him, he's a beast. He's in great shape. He's very strong, so he's hard to knock off the puck despite being short. He's got great skill, great heart, and he's a fun player. I think I've really pushed him to try and go to the EIHL. I pushed him towards that. I said, I think it would be a great experience for you, and there's some big crowds nowadays and a lot of attention being paid compared to past years. Who knows? Maybe he'll take me up on it one day, and you'll see him over there. But he did play one season in League Magnus when he first came out of Major Junior, but I want to say he was only 19 or 20 years old at the time. And then he moved on to, of all places, Kazakhstan, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, but it's similar to the VHL, the Russian second league in terms of the level. It's a good level of play. And actually, I think some of, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it's Nottingham, but I think they played in the Continental Cup. Was it Bierbreyer from Kazakhstan or one of those teams? They played. I don't remember which club, but they played a Kazakh league club, and it was a hell of a game. It was pretty well matched teams.
Well, we also had a long-time Sheffield Steelers defenseman, Ben O'Connor, who's one of the better defensemen, or has been one of the better defensemen over the years in the league. He went and played a year in Kazakhstan. And he almost got a gig with Baris Astana of the KHL because of it. But the contract was terminated because there was new ownership that came in, or there was something else behind the scenes. So we decided to go to Sweden for a little while instead, because, you know, we need to have those British players out there playing abroad, you know, like highlighting
Absolutely.
the game, just like you guys need to do with the Israeli game. So go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, Ben O'Connor, you know, I just remember the whole run. He was part of that run just a year or two ago, right? When GB made the elite group.
Yep.
And I just you know, unfortunately, after about a 12-year run, the International Hockey Forum's website is closed, but we still have a Facebook page. And if you go on it, if you just look up International Hockey Forums on Facebook, you'll see the cover photo that we have is still of GB playing against Finland, you know, in the Worlds. And I personally was a huge GB supporter during that run. It was awesome to see the Union Jack with the Lion and going out there and playing. And I a huge supporter of the GB national program and the team. I think you guys are really coming up in the hockey world and doing a lot more than you seem to give them credit for. They've made a good run, and they're a legit team now.
Definitely. And I think as a UK fan myself, and kind of knowing the general feelings of the UK hockey fan base, we love the steps that are being taken, and we can see the potential that the game has here in this country, and we just want it to keep going. We can see that there's that snowball effect starting to take place. We just need to keep it up for the next, you know, few years and see if we can get something going on, you know. Some of you might notice now that I've got another guest here today. I'm just getting lots of people here to talk about hockey, Israeli hockey in general. I'm bringing everybody here for you guys. You know, it's our first episode with guests here today. Why not go all out, get everybody here, and have a good chat about the sport? So I'm joined here by Ariel. So hello, Ariel. How are you?
I'm doing very good.
Good. So could you just quickly just let us know who you are, what your experiences with hockey. I know you've mentioned, I've had a conversation with you and some of the other guys with Israeli hockey to get a bit of your background. But do you want to just let the audience know listening what your experience is with hockey and where you're playing at the moment, and kind of your experience with the sport? And go for it.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. It's always awesome to tell my story. I feel like it's a very unique story, you know, growing up in Israel without having hockey everywhere, like most of these Canadian boys and American boys are advocate to and used to. So it was very tough for me in the beginning because, you know, I started playing hockey on rollerblades, and then the only rink was up in Metula, which was 3 hours away, and it wasn't a real possibility to drive up there and train like a normal kid. So I was pretty good at roller hockey, and at the age of 13, I decided to move into Canada to try. You know, my parents supported me, and they gave me every opportunity that I could have asked for. And I started training with the Canadian kids 5 times a week, and slowly I got better and better. And once I realized that, you know, I want to do something with hockey, I figured the best way is to go into college hockey. And I moved to America because of that, and I started playing junior hockey, and it's been a blast since. Junior hockey definitely helped me a lot. It made me into more of a man, and it's just, I'm happy. I'm currently in Boston. It's a high-tech school that is located in downtown area. It's Division III NCAA, and you know, it's everything that I could have asked for. We train here every day. We get to go to school. I'm living the dream at the age of 22, and it's awesome.
Which is perfect.
And
I mean, that's all you could ask, really, isn't it? That's all you could ask.
Yeah. Ariel, you're playing for Wentworth, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So Ariel, I just wanted to ask, I think this is a question that everybody listening to this show will have. And Mark and I have had a bit of a discussion earlier in the episode talking about the infrastructure of Israeli hockey. And we've mentioned, obviously, the lack of facilities throughout the country and how that's slowly getting there, but still a long way off from being to where Boston is or where any of the big areas in Canada are. How did you get into the sport of hockey? What made you think, you know what, I want to try my best to go at this and have a good chance to play college hockey? What got you into hockey originally? What was the first sort of moment you remember where you think, you know what, hockey's really like cool, I like that?
It's different. It's like a different creature, this sport. You know, it's the combination of speed and skill. And maybe when you're young, you don't really understand it, but you sort of just fall in love with it. You really get addicted to this. I don't think there's one answer to this, but you know, it's.
I think for Israelis, it's a great sport because, first of all, you're in the Mideast. It's hot, and it's hockey is just, you know, you hear the blades biting into the ice. You get the mist coming off of the ice, and for me as a goalie, you know, you're down on your knees. You make a save, guys. You know, spray you with snow. A lot of people get angry about that. I love it. You know, it cools you off. It's the speed of the game, the camaraderie, the teamwork, and also the fierceness of it. I just think when you combine everything, it's a perfect sport for Israelis.
It is. Those are all the qualities an Israeli should have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why not? I mean, hockey is obviously such a sport that, as me in England, like I've mentioned to Mark earlier in the episode, there's a lot of people in my country that don't know we have a professional hockey league. There's a lot of people that don't know that, like Mark alluded to earlier, we've made some great strides with our national team, and we had the Nottingham Panthers go through to the playoffs of the Champions Hockey League a few years ago. We've had 5 different teams compete in the Champions Hockey League since it began over the last few years. So it is kind of, it's kind of nice to have that underdog story to you, to be like, oh, we're not a conventional hockey market, because then when you go and prove everybody wrong, or kind of go and play really well and subvert a lot of people's expectations as to how good you are. Did you find that you had to do that potentially, Ariel, moving to Canada and then obviously going to university in Boston? Did you find that you had to work a little bit harder than some of the other players? Did you have to put in more reps than some of the other players to be like, look, I might not be a Canadian that knew how to skate from the second they could walk. I'm not a person that's picked up a stick from the second I was born, you know? Like, obviously you mentioned how you started in rollerblades, so you didn't even get onto the ice until slightly later on into your love of the sport. Did you find that you had to really work a lot harder than some of the other people to get to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. And sometimes I felt like an opportunity was taken away from me because of it. The Canadian and the American boys, you know, they have their parents there right next to them on every decision. They have their family. They're talking to the coach. They're in the best relationship. And there comes this Israeli boy that, you know, is skating pretty well and is at their level and thinks the game pretty well. And, like, you know, he's got nothing wrong with him. But why would you give him the edge over him if, you know, you have a better communication with this guy and whatnot? So, of course, I felt it getting taken away from me. And also, it's of course.
Yeah, I think an interesting parallel that I've mentioned on some of the other podcasts on this network for the fans that listen to maybe this and some of the other like NHL team podcasts is when you think of the big sort of highly touted European prospects that move over to the NHL, like the Capo Kakos and those kind of players. I don't think a lot of people realize just how much these players, how much of a culture shock it is, first of all, that you're going to the complete other side of the world. You might not know the language very well, especially from those Scandinavian countries where Swedish or Finnish is kind of the primary language for them. So like you mentioned, there's that you might not be able to communicate with the coaches as much as some of the other players, or you're a new guy in the locker room, so you don't necessarily have that relationship with them already. And it's kind of, I would imagine, obviously I've never been in this situation, so Ariel, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine it's a case of either you have to go, right, I'm going to need to work 5 times, 10 times as harder to make sure I get the ice time, get the opportunities that I feel like I deserve given my ability, or I just kind of shy away from the challenge and kind of get what I'm given, you know? Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes, I do. I agree with you completely. We got to earn every inch when we come overseas. Nothing is given to us. And same thing would go for those American and Canadians. You know, if they want to come into Europe, they have to be the best players. And if we want to, so it's, yeah.
I think that's true of imports wherever you go. I mean, it's kind of what Ariel's alluding to in the sense that if you're going to come as an import to a different league, you've got to be not only as good as the local guys, but you have to be better, because otherwise, why are they going to use up an import slot on you, right? So you really have to stand out. Ariel's been able to do that. You were playing with the Seahawks, right, Ariel?
Yeah.
Which league was that? Was that WSHL?
No, it's the Eastern Hockey League.
Oh, the Eastern. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, the Eastern is a Tier 3 USA hockey structure, but it's one of the best ones, if not the best one, in Tier 3. So it's in Canadian terms, Hayden, it would be like the borderline between Junior A and Junior B.
Right. Okay.
It's a really good league, and you know, Ariel is I think what are you, the second to play D3? NCAA D3, Ariel? After Roy,
I'm the only Israeli to play Division III hockey, and the Eastern Hockey League has helped me tremendously. I was there for 2 years, and I actually got a really funny story. My first year there, I was an import, and we had 3 imports in the team. I was the third one, and I was also the bottom one. The top 2 came from the null, and a month into the season, I was with the Boston Junior Rangers, and another import came down from the NA, from the null, which is a Tier 2 league, and they told me that I was going to get sent down because of that. So I decided to get traded to the Seahawks, which is in the Cape Cod, and I had to, you know, make my mark and prove myself. And my second junior year, my age out year, I was in Canada trying out for the BCHL, and I made it. And they told me that you're not going to play that much. You were going to be 4th line, 3rd line in the BCHL. So I decided to come back into the Eastern Junior Hockey League and have a good season. The EHL provides an insane amount of views from Division III colleges. There's no Division II, so just so much opportunity to commit to any Division III college that you want. And I decided that I want to go to school somewhere in the city, somewhere that I will enjoy, somewhere that will remind me of Tel Aviv. So somewhere with a big Jewish community. So Wenroof was the ultimate dream for me. Yeah.
I don't know if Boston is much like Tel Aviv, though, my friend. It's a little colder, and the beaches and palm trees are not quite the same. But it is a great hockey city, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
The bars are the same. Yeah.
I mean, you know, Hayden, what we were talking about earlier, and Ariel, I don't know if you were listening before you jumped in, but in the North America, again, I keep saying North American, but in the United States university hockey pyramid, there's really 5 tiers. And for the most part, anyway, there's a couple of small independent loops, but it's basically 5 tiers. And NCAA D3, although the name would indicate otherwise, is really the 2nd tier. It's right underneath D1 NCAA, and of course NCAA D1. You have guys stepping out immediately into the NHL, the AHL. So NCAA D3, where Ariel is playing, it's amazing for Israeli hockey supporters to see Ariel playing at that level, because there are NCAA D3 guys that go on and play pro in, you know, some of the lower to mid-tier European leagues. Just a year or 2 ago, one of the colleges in D3. Now you got to remember, NCAA D3 has about 70 some odd schools, I think. So the level is different between the top and bottom teams, but some of the top D3 teams from NCAA have come across and beaten League Magnus teams, or at least in some games played competitively with them. They've beaten France D1, which is right under League Magnus and still pro. And then one of the teams, Oswego, came over a year or 2 ago and played HC Alleghe from the Italian league, beat them 8-2. And they crushed a whole bunch of Swiss D1 teams, which is the top amateur level in Switzerland. So it's really good hockey. And Ariel, it's amazing to see you play at NCAA D3 level. I think every Israeli hockey fan has to be thrilled to see that we're producing talent like Ariel now, because to get to play legitimate NCAA hockey is really NCAA D3 is semi-pro hockey level already. It's legitimate semi-pro hockey, and in some countries would be full-on pro level hockey. So it's a really good accomplishment, and we're hoping to see you get into some more minutes and some more games next season when it starts.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. I really, really appreciate it, because it was a long journey for me to come to D3, but in a way, now that I'm here, it doesn't feel like much. It doesn't feel like everything. I just want more and more and more, and I have 3 more years to go. And, I just came back from practice now, and I feel like this year is starting a bit different. I'm feeling like I have more of a role. I'm feeling like, and if I can become that impact player this year and have another 2 years, like you said, maybe I can end up on some lower end European team to make a living too. It's just, I really want to play hockey as long as I can, and I'm looking at any direction that will lead me there.
Well, I will tell you, my friend, being an Israeli, you know that the Israeli hockey tradition is to play throughout your 40s, because there are so few of us that play. So you have a long way to go. I mean, I just turned 49 the other day, but I realistically stopped playing only 2 years ago. When I was 47, my last game was February of 2019. I played in the New York Rangers charity assist game for Long Island, where they have a bunch of Rangers alumni and former minor league and former college players playing to raise, money for youth hockey in the area where I live. And I figured if that was how I was going to go out, I was going to do it at 47, playing against Darius Kasparaitis and Colton Orr and a couple of guys like that. So it was a lot of fun. So you have a long way to go, and enjoy the college experience. It's 3 years is still a long time.
Yeah. And
then maybe when you're done, you go to Europe, and who knows, maybe you end up in the UK, and it's a hell of a league over there.
It is a hell of a league. I heard of Liam Kirk. He came from there. That's an insane story.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. So, So for those of you watching the episode that might not be aware, I was going to actually make a similar parallel, because Mark was obviously mentioning not many Israeli players get to play D3. To a lot of Israeli hockey fans, Ariel, you might be a bit of a trendsetter, like a trailblazer, kind of doing something that not many hockey players from your country have necessarily done, and that's very much how we see Liam Kirk, for example. So for those of you who aren't aware, Liam Kirk became in 2018 the first British-born and completely British-trained player to be drafted at the NHL entry draft. He was taken in the 7th round, which, towards the bottom of the draft, but as British hockey fans, will take it any day of the week. He was taken by the Arizona Coyotes. He's been playing with the Peterborough Petes of the Ontario Hockey League for the last few seasons. And it's funnily enough you mentioned him, actually. I just had a conversation with him earlier today, because I'm hoping to get him on the show at some point, because he's mentioned that he's now just been placed on loan to Sweden. So he's going to be playing over there for a little while. So I'm hoping to get a chance to have a chat with him when he gets into his routine with his new team, and gets the opportunity to, tell his story like you mentioned, and kind of talk about what it's like to be a player from an unconventional hockey market to have such an incredible achievement. And obviously being drafted in the NHL is the first step. Will he make it? We don't know, but he can still have a great career regardless.
Who's he playing with now in Sweden?
I will just check my messages, because I did have to ask him, because I wasn't 100% sure. It's one of the lower tier leagues. He's not playing in like the Swedish Hockey League or the Allsvenskan or anything. It's much lower down.
He's probably he's either playing D1 or D2 probably. D1 is still full pro, and D2 is kind of semi-pro mixed with amateur, I think.
He's playing with...
So I'm going to guess D1.
He's playing with Han Hals in the Hockey Etten, if that helps.
Hockey Etten, I think that's their 3rd level. I think it's D1.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where it is. I mean, of course, you guys had Tony Hand, so
of course
he could have played with Gretzky and Messier and Curry and Coffey and Edmonton, and just chose to come home. But he certainly had the talent level to play in the NHL. He just chose not to.
Yeah, when Glenn Sather says to Tony Hand that he was the second smartest player at the training camp other than Wayne Gretzky, I made a video on him for my YouTube channel, which a lot of my the viewers on this show will obviously know. And I basically said, like, it's a very interesting situation with Tony Han, because as hockey fans here in the UK, we're kind of like, why didn't he go and play with Edmonton? That would have been so good. But at the end of the day, like, he made the right choice for him. He obviously tore it up in the UK league for his entire career, and he only retired within the last half a decade. So the leading point scorer ever, and he's made great progress and done some great things for the GB national squad and our international system, which you could make the argument that if he was over there, he wouldn't have helped to make our international program where it is now. So, you know.
Well, he's a legend, and
yeah.
You know, to use him as a segue, I had mentioned Evgeny Gusin before. You know, he's and Ariel knows, you know, Goose. Everybody in Israel hockey knows Goose. You know, I want to say he's 51 or 52 now, so he's basically Tony's age, I guess, and a couple of years older than me. Like I said, he played in CSKA Moscow's minor system. He played with Kristal Elektrostal. He was a longtime hero for the Israeli national squad. In fact, he basically carried them on his back in 2005 to a victory in Division One when Israel had actually made it up there. And then the next year in 2006 in Amiens, France, of course, Israel got to compete against France, GB. Germany at the time with Thomas Greiss in net and Marco Sturm and guys like that. And so, yeah, we got killed and sent right back down to D2, but we played. And, you know, what Evgeny Gusin is doing now is he's really helping, you know, he's the driving force really with us behind the Israeli National Hockey Society. And he owns and runs HC Bat Yam, which he used to play for, which again has been the class of the Israeli League for 3 of the past 4 seasons and competing in the Continental Cup. But he's got 2 initiatives that I really want to bring to light really quickly. One is you've heard potentially of a KHL game coming to Jerusalem.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Maccabiah games, but that is essentially the Jewish Olympics where countries come from all around the world, just like the Olympics, only with mostly Jewish athletes, not all, but mostly. And there was, with some really nice donations from some NHL owners and from Gary Bettman himself in the NHL, they had transformed the arena in Jerusalem that Hapoel plays their basketball in for hockey. So the Maccabiah had 2017, they had hockey there. And of course, now that the facilities are in place to transform it when it's needed, the idea is to bring a KHL game to Jerusalem. Gusin, in his past experience playing in the CSKA system, is very good friends with Vyacheslav Fetisov.
Oh wow!
Who,
okay.
Really doesn't need any kind of introduction to any hockey fan the world over. So Fetisov and Gusin are working with a group to put on this KHL game in Israel to gauge interest. Israel has about 8 million people, and about 1 million of them are from the former Soviet Union. So the market for hockey here in Israel could really explode if those 1 million people are exposed to truly high-end world-class hockey, which the KHL could provide. So the idea is to have a game. They were trying to get it for this December, but it looks like with coronavirus and everything, it's going to happen next year, unfortunately. But it's going to happen. And the deal is in place. And then, the other thing that is being bandied about is the possibility of a KHL franchise being put into Israel to tap into the Russian and former Soviet population that's here in Israel, 1 million strong. If they can get a KHL team in, Beijing, China, they have Kunlun Red Star in the KHL. And if they've had KHL franchises in other countries outside of Russia and outside of the former Soviet Union, which they have done, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do it in Israel. And if you think about the distances for the travel, it's really not that far compared to the rest of Europe. So if they were thinking about either Jerusalem or Haifa to put a KHL club, and Evgeny Gusin's behind the initiative to see if that can happen. We don't know if it's going to happen, but they are trying. And at the very least, they're going to bring a KHL game to Israel to gauge interest, and it'll be super exciting. If, in fact, a KHL club does come to Israel, we're hoping that while that would obviously be the huge focus for Israeli hockey fans, having a team in the second best league in the world, we're really hoping that it would help as a springboard to really grow the Israeli domestic league and have some more interest in that league from the Israeli population. Now you'll see people anywhere from, 25 or 50 at a game to maybe 250, 300 at a game. The finals, Ariel, you can confirm this. I think in Holon at Ice Peaks in Holon, I think during the finals they can have 400 or 500 people maybe, but that's about as much as they get.
Yeah.
So to if a KHL team came, we're hoping it could actually trickle down and help not only raise the level, but interest in the domestic league and maybe help with sponsors and everything else. And the last thing I did want to bring up, today, Hayden, was that one of the Israeli National Hockey Society's initiatives is that we're trying to put together a semi-pro level summer league in Israel along the lines of what they have in Australia or New Zealand, where they do it in the summer so that it doesn't conflict with other leagues. And then we're hoping, put you on the spot here a little bit, Ariel, we're hoping that we would get players of the caliber of Ariel, guys his age, guys who have not everyone has to have a connection to Israel, people who would be, interested in just seeing what the lifestyle is like in Israel and the weather and living on the beach in Tel Aviv with palm trees and getting to play some competitive hockey for the summer. Maybe someone who has a deep Christian faith might want to come and see where Jesus preached and walked. And also, of course, Jewish players from around the world who are of decent caliber and might be playing pro elsewhere. We'd like to try and attract them to come. The plan is originally for, a 4-team to 5-team small summer league, maybe a dozen games and then playoffs. But if we can launch that, we think it can ultimately really help grow the game in Israel.
I mean, if you need a couple of British guys to come and help commentate the games, or if you want some extra coverage, just let Chris and I know. We'll be over there. Why not? A summer in Israel, we'll take it.
Absolutely. Don't tease, because if we start that, you may be with a camera and doing more things like this only on the ice. That would be great.
I'll take it 100%. And I think Chris would too. So I'm really glad that you mentioned the KHL game, because once again, Mark, you're giving me some fantastic segues to get all of the little piece of information I wanted to get done. So as far as you're aware, because obviously there's a lot of things that have come up globally. There's a lot of other pieces of information and things that need to be finalized or discussed. When we mentioned it on our show a couple of weeks ago, it was Avangard Omsk and CSKA Moscow. Are they the two teams that have been finalized as the teams that are coming over?
To my knowledge, yes. I mean, anything's obviously subject to change, but my understanding is it was CSKA Moscow and Avangard, yes. Which,
I mean, they're two fantastic KHL teams, some of the best teams in the league, which, once again, to get two of the best teams, because there's one thing Chris and I have talked about throughout this podcast series over the last couple of months is that there's a bit of a disparity between the top teams and the bottom teams in the KHL, especially over the last few years. The salary cap obviously being introduced this year, the flat salary cap as opposed to the luxury cap, has definitely helped that with a lot of teams. But Omsk and CSKA Moscow always consistently at the top of the standings, both in the West and the East. So to get two very strong, established teams full of Russian stars, former NHL players, that's only going to do wonders for the game, and hopefully bringing the attention to sort of the potential of hockey in Israel, right?
Yeah, one would hope. And I think, Ariel, did you play Maccabi?
I did. I just turned 18 and I played with the adults. Yeah.
You played in the Men's Open in 2017?
Yeah.
So
nice.
I think Ariel can tell you when they what's the name of the arena there in that Hapoel plays out of?
Well, Israel has an amazing basketball league, amazing, and the second best team to Maccabi Tel Aviv is Jerusalem. they have a world-class facility, like locker rooms, and it was amazing. And to transfer that into a hockey rink was mind-blowing to have in Jerusalem. And I'm sure that all of the really good Maccabi players that came from the United States enjoyed it so much. And to have a KHL game there is more than surreal, because that arena. Yeah.
And you guys had some fans, though. I mean, there are tapes of the games. Hayden, I can send them to you, actually, and
sure.
We'll get them up. We'll get them up on the Society's site. But I have, I know you guys played, Russia sent a team to Maccabi in 2017 that consisted of, it was a mix of VHL, their third league, what is that, Prevea Liga, and then they had, the top Russian junior league, the MHL.
Yeah. So
their roster was a combination of VHL, Prevea Liga, and MHL guys. And, they beat the Israeli national team, but they played them twice and they won both times, but once was the bronze medal game, unfortunately. But Ariel will tell you that we were in those games. They didn't blow us out.
Yeah.
They were, what was it, 7-4 and something like that? I don't remember the other score, but one was, they were within a couple of goals. And you guys had some fans, right? I mean, the arena wasn't full because a lot of Israelis didn't necessarily know about it, but I think there was at least a section or two in the arena that was just jam-packed with fans, and they were chanting. I mean, you can expand on that, Ariel, and let Hayden know, what the atmosphere was like for you.
Please do. Please do.
Well, Canada and the U.S. during the gold medal game, I don't know if you guys know, they had over 10,000 fans, and it was
Wow.
an event. It was one hell of an event, really. Us between Russia playing the bronze medal game, we thought we had him because we lost the last game 7-4, and it was pretty tight, and we felt like we were a bit younger, we had more legs, but yeah,
it happens. But you guys had a couple thousand fans, right? I mean,
yeah.
Look, when you're in a huge arena like that and you only have a couple thousand fans, it seems empty. But the reality is, for hockey in Israel, to go from your typical league game with 200 people attending a game to all of a sudden having 1,500 or 2,500 fans to support the national team, that's a step, right? And everything's a step. So if all of a sudden we can go and get a KHL game where people jam the arena, and now all of a sudden there's a domestic league that, while certainly not of the same caliber, is on the rise. If we can start getting, in the little rink in Holon, 500 people a game instead of 50 people a game or 200 people a game, it's a start. And all you can ask for is steps. And that's really what we're looking to build.
Exactly.
I have a question for Hayden. What do you think should be the next steps for Israeli hockey to get to where England hockey is, from having 1 to 2 to 3 rinks and then expanding our summer league? Like, what are the right steps? Because you can't just go, I feel like it needs to be,
Okay, so I will preface this by saying I am not an expert. This is purely my own thoughts and opinions. I've only been following the British League for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. What I do know is our league has been around for a very long time, rivaling kind of NHL, AHL periods of time. As far as I'm aware, some of the oldest teams we have in this country, the Nottingham Panthers was, I think, started up either around about the time or just before the Second World War, so the 40s. And a team in Scotland, the Five Flyers, were around in the 30s, I believe. So we had a couple of teams there which, they've been around a long time, and obviously it's been a slow burn to get where we are today. Our league is obviously still very much a lower tier league in the European circuit. We're obviously, like we've mentioned earlier in this episode, been on the rise. I think the first thing is just the primary thing. And I think anybody that's either played or watched hockey would agree with this. You just need to find people. You just need to get people into the arena. Because once they've made it into the arena, they fall in love with the sport and they want to come back, right? I think you could ask 99.9% of hockey fans, when they watched their first game, did they want to watch another one? like they're always going to answer yes because it's so fast paced and it's so quick and there's always a lot going on. And like I think especially fans of basketball, for example, and obviously because that's big in Israel, like you guys mentioned, it's got that same kind of quick, fast paced feel to it. But hockey's even faster. There aren't as many stoppages in the sort of average game of hockey. There's the fouls in basketball obviously can slow the game down quite a lot, whereas in hockey you just send the guy to the box and you keep playing. So I guess it's just a case of finding a way to get those fans to, first of all, recognize that like Israel has that league and they have this infrastructure already in place, and then to get them into the stands to watch the games. Because I feel like that's been the biggest a roadblock that we've had here in the UK, is the fact that we have a really good infrastructure in place. And Mark's obviously mentioned a lot of the sort of the good things that we've done over the last sort of 5-10 years. However, the vast population of our country that don't live in one of the cities where the teams are, don't know that we have hockey. I could ask all of my friends around my area where hockey isn't a big thing. I could ask them, they'd say, no, wait, we have hockey here, like, and we have a professional league that plays against some of the best teams in Europe every year. Like that's such an alien concept to a lot of them. So I think kind of getting the sport in people's minds and going, look, we have a professional league here in Israel. We have some pretty good hockey players here. Oh, and then let's have a look at some of the other players that are like Ariel, for example, that are playing D3 hockey over in Boston. You know, like that all comes from getting those people in the stands. And I think the details that Mark mentioned with the KHL game, that's going to do wonders for a program like the Israeli hockey program. Because, I mean, like you mentioned, there's a huge influx of people from the former Soviet Republic and Russia that have moved to Israel. So if they can tap into that market and the Israelis there, because like we mentioned, you get people into the stands, they enjoy it, bringing two of the best teams on this side or your side of the continent over in Israel, that's going to do wonders. And I think it's a slow burn. It's a really slow burn. But once it starts to pick up momentum and snowball a little bit, that's when you start to see all the progress. Would you say that's fair, Mark?
I do. The only thing I do want to point out is, we don't have a pro league in Israel. The National League is still an amateur level league. Like I said, it's basically like collegiate club, intercollegiate club, and junior B type level. But we are looking to do that summer league because it's a smaller amount of teams and a more compressed schedule at a time of the year where it doesn't really interfere with other higher level leagues. We're hoping to attract a semi-pro caliber to that summer league. And in turn, if somebody falls in love with Israel and playing hockey there, maybe they'll want to stay in the domestic league. Again, the only thing is, it's like anything else in hockey or any sport, it's money. So what we need to do is really attract corporate sponsorship and some benefactors that care about the country who happen to be hockey fans that have the ability and desire to help it grow. In order to do that, I think even if the level of play is still considered amateur, if we got Hayden, somebody like yourself, to come for the summer league, and we had some high quality live video streaming, some maybe even getting something on television in Israel. Really, it just needs to be exposed to a wider base. The 2013-2014 Israeli League Championship game is the only time that Israeli League hockey has been televised to a Israeli national audience on TV.
Wow.
Israel channel, TV channel 9. It was a Russian language broadcast, but they did the whole game the same way you would see an EIHL or even an NHL game. They did it, and it attracted a lot of attention at the time. The issue is, how do we get, for the Israeli domestic league and for this summer league that we're planning, how do we get that on Israeli television? How do we get the newspaper beat reporters to start covering it? How do we, if we can't even get that, at least not yet, how do we get a high quality live stream on a YouTube channel and promote it through social media so that enough people know about it and they want to watch it? And that's one of the reasons I'm doing something like this podcast today, is because we want to get the word out there and one of the ways we're doing that is through, the society with IsraelHockey.com. That's one of the things that we're trying to do as that first step to really try and start elevating the profile of the sport, both inside of Israel for the Israeli public, but also for people around the world who happen to have an interest in Israeli hockey.
I think one thing I would mention, some of the things that some of the steps that you think the Israeli league needs to take in order to expand that wider audience. Our league here in the UK, we're still struggling with those things too. We've got one TV network that plays NHL games. It plays usually, I think they agreed a contract last year where it was one Elite League game a week or a game every fortnight or something. And most of the teams have their own webcasts, for example. So it will be, pay £10 to get the ability to stream a certain game. So there's obviously a lot of discussion about that, and a lot of the owners are, I'm not sure we want to have a webcast because that means less people want to come to the games. Yeah, if you ask any hockey fan if they had the option whether to go and watch it live or watch it at home, they'd always choose live. I think that's just it's a bit of a ridiculous argument to me, and Chris and I have discussed that argument quite a lot over our time since we've known each other. But yeah, I think it is quite interesting and quite important to point out that even a league that the Israeli league might look at and say, well, the UK league's doing a fantastic job, we're still facing the same issues as you guys are today. So it's all the little intangibles underneath that need to progress as well in order to make sure you're at that position that you can find out those TV deals and get everything in place.
I think for Israel, it's a little different. You guys are a full-blown pro league. So for us, with the domestic league, I think we just need to get it on TV, get it live streamed on high quality feeds on the internet and promote it on social media so people know about it, and not necessarily charge for it initially anyway. You got to build the demand first, and people, I think, will respond. And if you see somebody, and I don't mean to call you a kid, Ariel, but for me, what are you, 22 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So for a kid like Ariel, who's a really damn good hockey player, if you get some young, exciting guys into play in Israel, and then you bring in some imports as well, that's really going to create interest, because now you've got some world-class players coming in from other parts of the world, but you've also got some world-class Israeli kids who, can connect to the public, speak to them in their language, and really give them something as, especially the kids in the youth camps. That's the other thing. When you're training kids to play the game and they're falling in love with the game, it's hard for them to ultimately take that next step if they have nobody to look up to and nothing to aspire to. So in Israel, it's always been, you aspire to the national team. Well, now, if you can aspire to the national team, but also say, oh, heck, I want to go play for, Bat Yam one day, or I want to play for the Rishon Devils, I want to play for CIHS Metula. If they see,
or I want to play college hockey.
I'm sorry?
They can say, I want to play college hockey too.
That's right. But I mean,
exactly.
They can go do that overseas and improve and come back. But once you do that, Ariel, the whole thing is, though, you want Israeli kids to say, hey, there's somewhere for me to play in my own country that's worthwhile after I'm done with college, or I'm done with junior, or I'm done training in Europe. It's great because not everybody's going to be able to be a pro hockey player in Europe. Most of the world can't. And look, most of the world's not going to get to play in the domestic league in Israel either. But if you've got a kid who can actually play and maybe not make it to the level of the EIHL in Britain, or certainly the KHL, but they still want to play legitimate competitive hockey and actually be recognized for it and have fans and have people in the news paying attention to it, then growing the Israeli domestic league is something that's essential for that, so that kids, look, again, take an Israeli kid who can play hockey. Not everyone's going to make the national team of a country. So if all of a sudden they at least have something to aspire to in a league where it's an accomplishment to at least make one of those teams, that starts to build the interest. And I think that avenue needs to be there for them. And then if you have somebody that's even better, like yourself, maybe you play there and then you move on to a pro league in Europe or you play NCAA hockey. And so the different levels are there. And it's not just you play youth hockey and then you hit a wall, because if you're not a truly elite player to go play NCAA hockey or pro in Europe, at least there's something that's legitimately good hockey to still aspire to and have people pay attention to. So I think like anything else, there's everything's always relative in hockey, right? For you can have someone who's a top star in the EIHL in Britain, but can they take that next step and go play in Sweden or Finland or Switzerland? And can those guys take the next step and then go play, in the NHL? There's always another level, but I think that level in Israel should get to a point where it's a legitimate option for Israelis who are coming back from college or junior to have a place to play, even if only for a couple of years while they're planning the next step in their hockey career.
Absolutely. And I'm kind of conscious of the time, because I know you guys must have very busy schedules to keep an eye on. But Mark, there is one thing that I did want to ask you about before we finish up in a little while, and that's the jersey behind you. You mentioned before we started recording the episode that you had a very funny story or a very interesting story that you wanted to tell about that jersey. So take it away.
It's an old jersey. This is the logo that used to be used by the national team. They now use a dove with a Star of David superimposed in the background and a hockey stick. We're actually in my living room right now, but my wife is kind enough to let me put that on the wall. But it's that when you marry a girl who's a hockey fan, it's a good thing. I'm just going to say that to all the hockey fans out there.
Definitely.
But this jersey actually was Evgeny Gusin's jersey. He wore this jersey with the national team, and Israel in 2005, when they won the Division II championship and made it up to the Division I, where, as you know, again in 2006 they played France, GB, Hungary, Japan, Germany. To get ready, the national team played the Spartak Cup with Spartak Moscow. They had the Vienna Capitals from Ibel, and they had, the Austrian League, and they had Neman Grodno from the Belarusian League, who, as you're probably familiar with, plays Champions League all the time.
Yep, as do Vienna.
Yep. And the Israeli team went in, and surprisingly, they didn't get completely demolished. Spartak beat them 6-0. Lost to Neman 4-2, but had a 2-1 lead, and lost to Vienna 4-3. And Gusin wore that jersey in the tournament. When I was asked to play the exhibition games in North America, these jerseys were recycled in the sense that they were laundered and sent over for use by the national selects team that we were on. And so I got to wear the jersey that Evgeny Gusin wore in Spartak Cup. And I got to play against MIT, Ferraro Brothers USA Selects, which was Peter and Chris Ferraro, former Rangers and Islanders, put together ex-Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. So I got to use it in that game. And I got to use it in the game against the Dallas Stars alumni. And when that Dallas game was over, the Federation gifted the jersey to me. So I had it framed, and it's my little way of being connected to an actual legend of Israeli hockey. So I'm very grateful to Evgeny and the Federation for letting me keep it. And, my own little hockey journey in some ways connected to Evgeny Gusin through that jersey. So it occupies a place on my wall in my living room, and I'm proud to have it.
I've got to say, I love that jersey. I mean, as jerseys go, that is a very good looking one. I love both the logo on the arm and on the front of the jersey. I mean, you can get some jerseys out there, especially international ones, that are kind of questionable, but I really do like that one. I've been like glancing at it the entire episode, being like, that is a nice jersey.
I appreciate it. They have the repros of them available on the site, theisraelhockey.com.
Oh, really?
So if anybody is interested in purchasing a jersey, one of the things that the website does, it's not for profit, and the money all goes to support the grassroots hockey initiatives in Israel that we've been talking about this afternoon. So if anybody is interested, that's my plug for IsraelHockey.com. Just go into the shop.
You know, I think I might have to get myself one of those. That will make a very nice addition to my collection. So the last kind of question I have before we finish up, I've got a couple more questions. Ariel, what are your kind of plans? Obviously, you've mentioned that you've got another 3 years, I think you said, in Boston playing D3. What are your goals from there afterwards? Obviously, a lot can change within 3 years. You might be completely different on what you're thinking. I know personally the differences between where I was now and 3 years ago are vastly different. But you mentioned earlier in the episode that you would be very open to the idea of playing professional hockey, whether it be in a lower tier European league or wherever, a higher tier league, if that's an option. What are your plans? Do you think that you would really seriously like to go into professional hockey and kind of see if you've got what it takes?
Of course. Last year, there were 2 seniors from our team. One of them went to the VHL. One of them went to the East Coast Hockey League. Mark is very familiar with those leagues. He's very aware of them. I had a shoulder surgery, a very tough shoulder surgery last year. It made me miss a lot of my games. It made me perform a bit less than I should have. But I trained hard this summer, and I'm hoping for a big year. I believe that if I have a big year sophomore year, and I have a big year junior year, and I have a big year senior year, I'm an Israeli-born citizen, but I can also get my European citizenship because my family's from there. I want to see where this goes. I have nothing to lose. People always tell me that you're going to regret it when you're older, so I don't want to regret it. I just want to give it a shot. Yeah.
I would totally do it, Ariel. And you know, it's interesting that you say that. I had, like I had told you earlier, Hayden, I had the opportunity to play for HC Bat Yam as Israel Evgeny Gusin's goaltending partner. Ended up not doing it, going to law school. Always regretted it, and luckily later in life got involved with the federation and had the blessing to play for the national team in 5 exhibition games. Besides the ones we mentioned, I played the Pittsburgh Penguins alumni and against Duquesne University. But I would have loved to have played just in the Israeli league with Bat Yam, much less professionally. So if you have the chance, Ariel, I will tell you as an older guy, jump on it. You only live once. Follow the dream as far as it takes you. And if it ends at Wentworth, then you know what? You played NCAA hockey, and that's more than I ever did, and it's more than most people will ever do. But you just keep going, and you will find a spot somewhere in Europe, and you will play professional hockey, and do not give up. Go do it.
Yeah. Speed is the name of the game, and my game is speed. So hopefully, you know, the game is transitioning into something that I'm better at, and, you know, hoping for the best. If you guys want to see the scar from my surgery, it's pretty intense.
Go for it. Go on. Show us the scar. Go on.
We'll get the podcast a little bit.
Okay.
Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I mean, you're not a professional hockey player or a D3 player until you've got a few scars under your belt, right?
Fair.
Or you can be an amateur player like myself and have you can't make a fist, right? There's the fist, and there's what I can do with this because it got shattered by a puck through my glove. That's what it is to be a hockey player, Hayden. You take the lumps and you come back and you just keep playing.
Absolutely.
But you can use that as a badge of honor now, Ariel. That's all. It keeps you going.
It gets girls. That's what it does.
Nice.
So the last question I have, and this can be answered by either of you. What's next for Israeli hockey? What's next for what are the big plans that either Ariel, you have at D3 with Boston? Are you hoping to have a good season with the team? Mark, have you got any big plans coming up that are in the works, or something that's been recently announced that's going to happen over the next coming weeks and months, maybe the rest of the year? What kind of the big things that you guys have to look forward to, both in your own careers or within your own bubble of Israeli hockey, or the wider sport as a whole? Like, what you guys got to look forward to?
Well, I think for my end, it's really, now at 49 years old, there's no more career to speak of. But there's, the Israeli National Hockey Society has taken a lot of my focus right now, because it really is a great organization to really help on so many different levels, between the federation, the National League, the Summer League that we're trying to create, the individual clubs, the schools. It really does help on so many different levels. So, that's really what my focus is on at the moment. I think for the national team, look, as you know, the World Championships were canceled. So Israel Hockey, like everybody else, will regroup and come back next year. They're going to play in Division 2A. And then, I think for Bat Yam, who's the defending National League champions, they're going to look to try and win the league again, because, the ultimate goal for an Israeli club is to play in the Continental Cup through the IIHF and get to play against other European champions. So I think that's the goal for Israel Hockey as a whole and myself, and I'll let Ariel close it out.
Well, I think we're heading into the right direction, all of us, everyone involved with Israeli hockey. It's just England and Israel. Hockey is written all over us. It's a sport that's intelligent, just like our communities. It's a sport that doesn't need us to be 6'4", 6'5" monster athletes. We can be ourselves. We can, perform very well at the sport because it's played on the ground. I believe facilities is, in my opinion, facilities is what's next for Israeli hockey. The facilities, that's what we've always been struggling on. The facilities will get everything. And for my college career, I'm really going to try to give it all, just give it all. Hopefully, I'll get somewhere with this.
No, absolutely. So, as far as first guests go on the Europuck podcast, gentlemen, you have been fantastic guests for me today. I would love to have you on the show at any other time. If you want to come back on, you've got something exciting to talk about. There's a new venture that you guys are taking on. Ariel, if you're having a really good season and you want to kind of come back on and say, I told you so, then feel free. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming out. And I really appreciate you coming to not only educate me, but educate our entire audience base on Israeli hockey and what the sport is like for you guys over there. So thank you once again, guys.
It's as in Hebrew, toda rabah, English, thank you. I really appreciate you having us, and it's been a pleasure. Would be only too happy to visit again.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So that was my interview with a couple of guys involved with Israel hockey, and on that wonderful note, I think this is a perfect place to end this week's episode. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in and listened. We hope you have enjoyed the show. Obviously, these were our first guests on the Europuck podcast about 2 months into the show running, so if you enjoyed these guests, if you want to see more guests of different varieties, we've got plenty of really interesting guests lined up if you guys want to see them, and we hope you enjoyed a little bit of a different episode this week to the usual reading out the scores and stats and the news. Obviously, there wasn't that much of Chris this week, so if you want to see more of Chris, do let me know in the comments, whether it be on YouTube or tweet at us at Europuck Podcast. But if you want to keep updated with all things Europuck Podcast, like I said, at Europuck Podcast on Twitter, or you can follow myself or my co-host on Twitter at OddmanRushYT or Chris_Gadsby. But thanks again for listening, guys. We hope you have enjoyed, and we'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.